When was the last time you went to the bank? Likely it was to deposit a paycheck or even ask for a car loan, and you may have even seen someone you knew there. After all, banks are little hubs of communities, places nearly everyone uses that can sometimes bring together the community. Far larger and with a far greater role than your local bank, the European Central Bank was created as an entire global region, Europe, became more closely integrated. The rest of this lesson will detail just how the ECB was created and its functions today. It's possible to assume that something like the European Central Bank would eventually be created in the European Union. After all, as early as 1962, the European Commission proposed that member states begin working toward total economic and monetary union between EU states. Only a decade later, in 1973, the European Economic Community, as the EU was known at the time, implemented a system which connected its member states' currencies to one another to ensure trade balances, but also paved the way for a future monetary union. However, the first tangible steps toward monetary union between member states did not begin until the 1990s. As part of the 1992 Treaty of European Union, which also officially changed the organization's name to the EU set out definite rules for the implementation of a future pan-European currency, the euro. The euro was implemented in 1999 for commercial and financial transactions, and in 2002, over 80 billion banknotes and coins were distributed across the EU in the largest monetary changeover in history. Though several organizations existed before the European Central Bank, the ECB was instituted first in 1998, largely to handle the changeover to the euro. The management of the European central currency has been its mandate ever since. Unlike other EU institutions like the European Commission or the European Parliament, the European Central Bank is completely independent of all other institutions. It answers to no larger European board in its management of currency affairs. In fact, it is highly illegal for any member of other EU institutions to try to influence the decisions made by the ECB. The ECB itself is made up of three main bodies, the first and most powerful of which is the Executive Board. The Executive Board is comprised of 6 members, all appointed to 8-year terms by the various leaders of Europe. On the board there is a president, vice president, and 4 other active voting members. The Executive Board is the most powerful organization in the ECB, and in addition to setting the general priorities of the institution, the Executive Board and its staff is also in charge of running the daily business of the organization. The second body of the ECB is the Governing Council. The Governing Council is in charge of the nitty-gritty details of the ECB's financial policy. It details and defines ECB monetary decisions and also controls interest rates between the ECB and commercial banks across the Eurozone. The Governing Council is composed of the Executive Board plus the 17 heads of the national banks of the countries that use the euro. The third body of the ECB is the General Council. The General Council's most important function is preparing for further countries to adopt the euro. However, as this happens every so often, the General Council largely works to advise and aid the other 2 bodies. It is made up of the President and Vice President of the Executive Board and the 28 heads of the national banks of all 28 EU countries. The most important duty of all these bodies and the ECB in general is to ensure the euro maintains its stability and strength as a currency. To this end, the ECB is in charge of keeping inflation under control and supervising EU financial institutions and trading markets. The ECB can't do this on its own, of course, so the bodies discussed above also cooperate closely with domestic national banks. Together, the ECB controls the amount of euros in circulation to combat inflation. The ECB also closely monitors exchange rates with other currencies like the US dollar and British pound, and invests in or sells these foreign currencies to make sure the euro remains internationally viable. The ECB also watches prices of an array of products across the Eurozone, from food to industrial materials, and tries to influence the market when prices become too high or too low and threaten the stability of the market. Basically, if it involves the euro, banks, or any type of financial transaction in the Eurozone, you can be sure the ECB is watching and regulating it. The European Central Bank was first instituted in 1998 in order to aid in the introduction of the EU's currency, the euro. Ever since, the ECB has been in charge with the currency's management. The ECB is comprised of 3 different bodies: the Executive Board, the Governing Council, and the General Council. All three work in concert with the heads of various national banks to ensure the stability and strength of the euro. Whether it's controlling circulation to combat inflation, watching prices, or managing exchange rates, the ECB has firm control of the euro and financial transactions across the eurozone.